Hi, happy Sunday. I'm Reverend Kathy McCall, and I'm the minister at Unity North Spiritual Center in Coon Rapids, Minnesota. So welcome to our Sunday lesson for August 17th, 2020. And I will start with our daily word in a moment, but first I want to mention, as I usually do, that you can check us out on our website, unitynorthmn.org. We're also on Facebook and Friends of Unity Friends of Unity Facebook page and YouTube, actually. So if you go to our website, you can find upcoming events, and one really exciting one coming up first is Good For You Day. We've added an S on the end, Good For You Days, because it begins on September 18th, but will also run through that week virtually. The whole thing is virtual this year. This is usually our grand day of, we could call it a healing fair, where there are all kinds of practitioners there. But for safety's sake, this year we're doing it virtually. And we'll begin on the 18th, Friday night, and I'll kick off with a class called The Transformative Power of Dreams. So you can find the info on the site, as well as information about the different readings and healing experiences available. And then we have a surprise event coming up on October 3rd. I will tell you more about that later. Also, you have a chance to donate on that site, and we just so appreciate all your gifts and offerings to support us through this time of pandemic especially. So now I'll begin our daily word for the day of, let me see, I said the 17th, it's the 16th, sorry. For Sunday, August 16th. The word is protected. I shine my light and feel protected. Feelings of fear that creep into my life may conjure childhood memories of scary nighttime images and noises. As a child, I may have felt afraid of the dark, as startled by an unfamiliar sound, but the morning sun always dispelled the darkness, and I realized there was never anything to fear. I keep that knowledge alive as I let the divine presence within dissolve the darkness of fear and shine the light of comfort and safety. Now, when any darkness descends in my life, I remember the protecting love, presence, and power of God expressing as me. As I attune more fully to my divine nature, light dawns within my consciousness, and I realize that God's protection is always mine. And from Psalm 27:1, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? All right, so this is the lesson again, August 16th, 2020, and the title today is called Trusting Guidance. Life challenges to trust our inner guidance. One man sought guidance from his doctor. He said, "When I press my forehead with my finger, it really hurts. And when I do the same to my cheek, it's also painful. Even if I press on my stomach, I suffer. What can it be?" Stumped, the physician sent the patient to a specialist. The man returned to his doctor the following week. "Well, what did the specialist say?" the doctor asked. Man replied, "He said I have a broken finger." Well, guidance comes in many forms. Greg Lavoie, in his book Callings, speaks to the metaphoric guidance of dreams. He said, for example, you're trying to decide between following passion or security, and you dream of throwing a rock through the window of a bank and then burying your briefcase in the backyard. Is the message passion or security? You were unwittingly losing yourself in a job and dreaming of losing your wallet with all your ID in it. I'd say a warning about losing yourself. Someone with whom you're considering teaming up appears in a dream, wearing costume jewelry and fake leather shoes. You may want to reconsider that partnership. So you're determined to write an autobiography and you have dreams of becoming naked in public. Concerns about exposing yourself to the public. You're trying to decide whether to move to another country to work and you receive a dream that tells you exactly what you should do. Well, this is what happened to Renata Ackerman in 1989. She was living in her native Switzerland, starting up a career as a therapist, when a group of people from the institute where she received her training in Zurich began making plans to start up a similar center in Portland, Oregon. And she began contemplating whether to join them. She weighed her choices. On the one hand was adventure and risk, living in the United States, being something of a founding mother, exploring the bigger world. On the other was security, her blossoming practice in Zurich, her culture, her language, a place where things were all set up. I kept wondering, she said, how do you make a decision like that? Her therapist told her that big decisions cannot be made entirely consciously. They have to be informed by other realms, by contact with something outside consensus reality. Wait for a dream or a sign, he told her, and just trust. A few weeks later, Renata had the following dream. She said, I was in a personal growth workshop, sitting across from my therapist, and we were meditating together. He said he was upset with me. He said he wanted me to give up my personal complexes, leave my personal history behind, and follow him to the United States. She woke up knowing this was her answer. And then she thought, do I really want this answer? Nevertheless, she trusted and she acted on her guidance. Within the year, she left Switzerland and moved to the United States and a whole new life. I love what Mother Teresa said. I know God will not give me anything I can't handle. I just wish he didn't trust me quite so much. Well, just as Renata's dream guided her, so too are our dreams, a significant part of our guidance. And there are many other ways we are guided as well. Once we know the meaning of our guidance, in whatever form it appears, we can refuse the advice, or we can trust and take action. Trusting is not always an easy ride. God's will tends to gently nudge us or even forcefully catapult us toward greater balance, greater wholeness, greater enlightenment. Now, just as Renata did not know whether she liked the guidance in her dream, telling her to move to the U.S., so too might we resist what is revealed to us. Everybody, to some extent, backs away from their authenticity, settles for less, hobbles their own power, does not speak when spoken to in dreams. Everybody occasionally ignores the promptings of the soul and then the discontent that ensues. We all have a part of us that fears change. We seek to conserve the meaning of our lives. We try to protect our years of investment in certain comfort zones. Sometimes we just don't want to experience the chaos that comes with trusting guidance. And yet chaos is the pure potential from which all things and all beings emerge. Now remember that when you're next in chaos. Oh, this chaos is merely the pure potential from which all things and all beings emerge. I feel so much better now. Well, I resisted my guidance to go into the ministry, even though I'd been on a long search to figure out what my spiritual calling was. When it became specific, I fought it for 3 years. I fought it by avoiding church, by telling myself I had children to think of, that I had a husband with a good job, I could not move my family. I told myself all sorts of stories. And you know what? They were all very logical. One thing about true guidance, it is often completely illogical. And that's the point. It comes from beyond the rational mind. Certainly our logic can help us decide certain things, such as there's not enough money to keep going as we have. But the big decisions always take place in the realm of spirit, and they may or may not agree with our logic. Our guidance can show up in different ways, for example, through our dreams, through our intuition, through our passions, through symptoms that are metaphoric, pain in the neck, from shouldering too much responsibility, for example, an overheard conversation in a restaurant or somewhere else that seems it was meant just for us. Places in our lives where there's friction, some lyrics that will not leave us alone, prayer and meditation experiences and instructions. Actually, the more we wake up and look around, the more we discover that guidance is everywhere. We can see it in nature with a bird flying overhead at the right moment. A tree can tell us our answer if we take the time to pause and to listen. The pattern of the stars. A book can come to us just at the right moment. Another person can say something. And the list goes on and on. One little boy followed his guidance and acted on it. A woman relates, while I sat in the reception area of my doctor's office, a woman rolled an elderly man into a wheelchair into the room. And as she went to the receptionist's desk, the man sat there alone and silent. Just as I was thinking I should make small talk with him, a little boy took action. He slipped off his mother's lap and he walked over to the wheelchair. Placing his hand on the man's, he said, "I know just how you feel. My mom makes me ride in the stroller too." Well, sometimes we have to be careful about blindly trusting others to provide guidance for us. A young executive is leaving the office late one evening when he finds the CEO standing in front of the shredder with a piece of paper in his hand. "Listen," says the CEO, "this is a very sensitive and important document here, and my secretary's gone for the night. Can you make this thing work?" "Certainly," says the young executive. He turns on the machine, puts the paper in, hits the start button. "Thanks," says the CEO as his paper disappears inside the shredder. "I just need one copy." Pay attention to the guidance you're listening to. Well, Gary Zukov refers to guidance through multisensory perception in several different incidents he relates. First, a businessman was late for his plane. He waited impatiently for his ticket and then he drove quickly into the huge airport garage. The first level was full, so was the second, and then the third and the fourth. And as he approached the ramp to the last level, desperate now, he suddenly stopped. A large sedan came speeding around the curve, going the wrong way. Neither would have seen the other before the crash. He had experienced multisensory perception, a direct link with information that the five senses cannot provide. He stopped and avoided the crash that would have been coming. A woman received a brochure in the mail, did not give it much attention. It was a conference that was too far away, too expensive, and not that interesting to her. But she kept reading it each day, unable to put it out of her mind. Without knowing why, she registered and booked a flight. The very first day, she met a man who was struggling with cancer. She had a passionate interest in the healing process. With her assistance, his cancer disappeared, and they co-authored a book together on healing. Her guidance came through multisensory perception. We all have it, and it goes beyond the rational mind. And that brings us to trust again. How can we trust when there are so many signs and voices, including the one of our own ego, that would prefer to keep us small and separate and focus on our fears? Are the voices we hear our inner guidance or the babble in Babylon? It makes me think of comedic singer Greg Tamblin's song called Clyde, My Inner Guide. It's about a man discovering that his inner guide is named Clyde. But Clyde keeps giving him terrible advice and guidance. So he sings, Clyde, Clyde, my inner guide, you lied. And then at the end of the song, he discovers his inner guide has been drinking all along. So ego was running the show. Not true guidance. Ego stands for edge God out. It's the false self whose mantra is more self-aggrandizement. Yes, in the Western world, the ego is looked at as helpful for our achievements because it does in some ways help us build our confidence, while the Eastern world says to eliminate it because it's that which keeps us separate from our true self. It's really both. It may catapult us into our greater confidence and expression, and it may keep us feeling small and separate. We want to befriend it and take charge of it rather than completely try to destroy it. Humorist Swami Beyondananda said, the process of enlightenment can be summed up in 3 words: ego, egoing, and egon. How can we trust in our guidance? You know, we can say, well, go within, listen to God. And yes, that's true. And if we keep asking and seeking and knocking, the divine wisdom will be revealed to us. Ego, on the other hand, works in self-talk and stories of fear and failure. Fear is false evidence appearing real. Or forget everything and run. And trust is the other option. How do we trust? When we trust our divine guidance, we go beyond the fearful judgments of the ego. It's like the story of the man who had a farm. The man had no mechanical equipment, and he plowed his field with a horse. So one day as he was plowing the field, the horse dropped dead. Everyone in the village said, "Oh, that's terrible." And the farmer said, "We'll see." Then the farmer was given a new horse as a gift, and everyone said, "What a lucky man." The farmer said, "We'll see." A few days later, the horse, being strange to the farm, jumped a fence and ran off, and everyone said, "Oh, poor fellow." The farmer said, "We'll see." A week later, the horse returned with a dozen wild horses following it, and everyone said, "What a lucky man." He said, "We'll see." The next day, his son went out riding, but the boy fell off the horse and broke his leg. Everyone said, "Oh, the poor boy." The farmer said, "We'll see." The next day, the army came to town, taking all the young men for service in the war, but they left his son because of his broken leg, and everyone said, "What a lucky kid." And the farmer said, "We'll see." When we are in the we'll see attitude, we are free to trust and follow our guidance and to accept the answers we receive without judgment. Sometimes, though, when it appears that the universe is not on our side, we have to wait and trust that God's will is absolute good. The first and basic premise of unity is that there's only one presence and one power in the universe, God, the good, omnipotent. That power is good. This divine presence behind and around and within everything is directing and guiding us to awaken, to know our wholeness, to know our oneness, to recognize the wonder, the blessing, the good in all. And the divine will asks us to trust. How do we do this? First, refuse to ever use the word failure again about yourself or another. Second, practice releasing fear by saying, fear is powerless over me. This fear is powerless over me. I release it and let it go. Third, ask for guidance. Fourth, ask to be receptive and trusting of the guidance. Then wake up, look around, and listen. And 5, finally, act on the guidance you receive. Jesus said in Matthew 7:7, ask and it will be given you, seek and you will find, knock and it will be opened to you. It is a promise, but when it is opened, we must walk through. When it is opened, we must walk through. Sometimes we remain in a passive, receptive state, like the farmer in the story who says, we'll see. And other times we are asked to make a radical leap in consciousness. Sometime Unity writer Emmett Fox speaks to the idea of moving beyond pure logic and taking such a radical leap of trust in one of his writings called The Unicorn. He writes of the unicorn as a powerful metaphor for God's will. He said, as long as we insist upon telling God his business, nothing very much can come of our prayers. The ox, the mule, the donkey will obediently pull your plow and your cart and take them where you want to go. But you have to know where that is and how to get there. In other words, the logical mind will obey us. But the unicorn, he says, will not do chores. He will not pull a cart or turn a mill. He will not take orders. The unicorn knows where he is going, and it's always somewhere you could not choose because you never heard of it. And in your present consciousness, you could not even dream that such a place could exist. Nevertheless, there are such places, and the unicorn knows them and is not interested in anything less. So someday, it may happen. Probably when you least expect it, that the unicorn will suddenly appear at your side, eyes flashing, nostrils quivering, pawing the ground with impatience. When that happens, do not try to put a bridle on him or to look for some task for him to do. He will not do it, and there will not be time. No sooner seemingly has he appeared than off he will go again. So do not pause, but leap upon his back, for he is a flying steed, and he wings his way to the gates of the morning. On that ride, problems are not solved. They disappear. When we trust in our guidance, we discover that God's will is nudging us and catapulting us into greater balance, greater wholeness, greater enlightenment, and greater good. All we need to do is trust and be willing to take the ride. God bless you. Have a wonderful week.